Pháp dương vô thượng tôn, tam giới vô luân thập. Thiên nhân chi đạo, sư tử sanh chi từ phù. Nhất niệm quy năng diệt tam kỳ. Xương dương nhược tán thán, ức kiếp mạt năng tầng.
Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. We start the final lecture of the Diamond Sutra by reading the sutra text. If the form is used to see me, if the sound is used to pray seeking me, he is practicing on the wrong path and cannot perceive the Tathagata. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. In these four phrases, the Buddha wanted us to know that if you rely on the form or the sound to find the Tathagata, then you have not understood the pure mind, which is neither born nor destroyed in each of us. He wanted us to find this pure mind in each of us. When you are on the path, you need to turn on your attention inward to your pure mind. And when you can see this pure mind, then that represents the prajna wisdom paramita. So when people ask you to show your pure mind, can you show it? For sure, you cannot. But does this mean that the pure mind does not exist? It does, but you cannot see it with your eyes or hear it through your ears. You can only see it through the prajna wisdom paramita. Through these four phrases, the Buddha wanted you to forget and not rely on the forms and sounds. Only by doing this will you be able to see the Tathagata, else you are deluded. If you lead your mind and look outward to find the Buddha, when will you be able to find the soul of awakening? It is like focusing on your finger while trying to look for the moon. Any physical body would disintegrate through time. So if you say that the Tathagata body changes through time, then you really don't understand the Tathagata. The Tathagata is the pure and silent mind that every being has. It is not the physical body that the Buddhas or the Bodhisattvas have, which were used to teach us about the blissful Dharma body in all of our minds. Even Sakyamuni Buddha has two teachers before he became enlightened. The first teacher helped him reach the fourth dhyana heaven, Tứ Thiền. The second teacher helped him reach the heaven of beyond the condition of thinking or no thinking, Phi tưởng phi phi tưởng Thien. After 6 years of searching and practicing, he used those methods to find the liberating and detached pure mind, but he was not able. Not until one day, after he drank a milk offering, and then entered Samadhi lasting 49 days, he awakened with complete enlightenment. The first thought that came from his mind was, how strange, how wonderful. The mind that I was searching exists in all beings, and yet they don't recognize it. He then realized that most beings are blinded by deluded and ignorant thoughts created by the outside world. And once these thoughts can be eliminated, then their pure minds would reappear. These four sentences show a mind that can only be seen when using Diamond Prajna wisdom. If you are using the function of your eyes and ears to search, then you are looking for a Buddha that is outside of your pure mind, and that does not exist. By looking outward, you are dependent on the forms of ego, human, all beings, and lifespan limit, which this sutra wants you to avoid. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. You should not think that because the Tathagata has a perfect form, therefore he attained the supreme enlightenment. Subhuti. You should also not think that anyone who dawns the supreme enlightenment declares that all dharmas can be extinguished. Why? Because anyone who dawns the supreme enlightenment would not confirm that dharmas can be extinguished. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. In our minds, we usually are stuck on whether to have or not to have. When you say it exists, then you forget about the it does not exist. When you say it does not exist, then you forget about the it exists. In this section, when it says that the dharmas can be extinguished, then it is referring to it does not exist. There are outsiders' religions that believe that if their minds are set on emptiness or no existence, then that is the same as nirvana. Almost all of those who do not practice the Buddhist teaching, when they reach the highest level, they will enter a state in their meditation completely devoid of all thoughts, or a state of complete emptiness. In Zen, we call this the deep and dark abyss. This place is void of wisdom. It is not Buddha nature. The outsiders do not understand about the liberation of the pure mind and think that if their minds become empty, where nothing exists, then that is liberation. Where would they end up with this type of training? They will enter the heaven of no thought. Because in their practice, they try to suppress their thoughts instead of letting their thought naturally subside. So in the first 500 years, they will enter this heaven of no thoughts. But afterward, remnants of their thought will rise. The Buddha has said that those who practice this way are similar to placing a big boulder on top of a grassy land. At first, what is underneath will be destroyed, but after a long time, when the boulder begins to wear down, the grass will regrow. In a similar fashion, once this practitioner dies, he will enter the heaven of no thoughts and enjoy its blissfulness. But after 500 years of time, when the thought begin to rise again, they will reincarnate back to the world. This is why the Buddha reminded us that we should not be biased toward the finality of things. If the Buddha was biased toward nothingness, then how could 12 volumes of sutras come into existence? While you are still practicing, you should eliminate your erroneous thoughts. If you can see your thoughts as well as your pure mind, then your erroneous thoughts should be transformed into the pure mind. This section can be only understood by an accomplished person, else you will be confused by erroneous thoughts versus pure thoughts. A-di-đà Phật. Once you realize your pure mind, then you will see this clearly. When the Buddha speaks, he does not use erroneous thought, but uses wisdom coming from his pure mind. Whereas when we speak, we use thoughts generated from outside influences. We need to understand this clearly. Greed, anger, and delusion are created by biased thoughts that are influenced by the outside world. Namo A Di Đà Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. If a bodhisattva gives away all of the 7 treasures that can fill as many worlds as all the sand grains in the Ganges River, while another who understood that all things are egoless attained perfection through the practice of patience, the latter acquire more earned blessings than the fortunate blessings of the former. Why so? It is because a bodhisattva does not accept fortunate blessings like material wealth. Subhuti then asked the Buddha, "Well-honored one, why does the bodhisattva not accept fortunate blessings?" Subhuti. If a bodhisattva who attained fortunate blessing but does not have greedy thoughts, then it can be said that he has not accepted fortunate blessings. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. In this section, the Buddha wanted to compare the difference between a fortunate blessing versus a non-recognized or accepted fortunate blessings by 2 bodhisattvas. We have one bodhisattva gave away all the 7 treasures in all the worlds that are as much as all the sand grains in the Ganges rivers, while the other used his effort to attain anti-mind and perfections of patience. The Buddha compared these 2 and said the latter blessing were greater. He also said the one that did not acknowledge his fortunate blessing has attained earned blessing, while the one who did acknowledge his blessings only attained a limited blessings. So how do you distinguish these 2 types of blessings? In the Platform Sutra, the 33rd Patriarch Fayan clearly explained this. Earned blessing is a result of your continuous practice, continuous effort. When the fruit of this effort ripens, then in your mind countless blessings naturally arise. Earned blessing comes from your spiritual practice and implementation of what you have learned. The Buddha also referred to earned blessing as a bodhisattva who does not accept fortunate blessings. This means that you practice with the true form and not being influenced by false forms of the outside world that can be seen or heard. The true form can only be accessed by the prajna wisdom. Regarding fortunate blessings, it comes from your offerings. If in the act of offerings, there is a recognition of the giver and the recipient, then it becomes a limited fortunate blessings that will bear fruit within the rebirth in the 6 realms. These fortunate blessings came from acts that are influenced by the forms of the outside world. These blessings could be 1. Future wealth, if you made financial offerings to help the unfortunate. 2. Future good health and physical form, if you have lived a life that did not kill or hurt any beings. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. If anyone says that the Tathagata comes, goes, sits, or lies down, then he does not understand the meaning of Tathagata. Why is that? It is because the Tathagata came from nowhere and has nowhere to go, which is why he is called Tathagata. Namo A Di Đà Phật. In this section, the Buddha clearly pointed out the true form of the Tathagata, so that we all could also see our true form. So, if you look into your mind right now, and if you can find what is motionless, what does not initiate thoughts, what does not come and go, then that is your true form. Everyone has this true form, but you neglect it and store it deep down inside because you still have greed and desire. You let your five senses control you and lead you away from your true form. In the Vietnamese Sutra, when the Buddha was physically not well, Ananda was looking for milk offering for the Buddha and met Vietnamese on the way. After greeting each other, Ananda informed Vietnamese that the Buddha was sick and he was looking for milk offering to help the Buddha to get better. Vietnamese recommended that Ananda should not use those words because outsiders will mock the Buddha. How can the Tathagata be sick? Was what Vietnamese objected to. Regarding the section that said the Tathagata does not come, go, sit, or lie down, that was referring to your pure mind, which does not come, go, sit, or lie down. You become deluded because you focus too much on the forms, which lead you to initiate erroneous thoughts. If you want to have your thoughts subside, then you have to live with an innocent, pure mind that is not attached to the outside world. A Zen master once said, "A natural mind is the way." He was then asked, how does he practice this way? He answered, "When hungry, I eat. When thirsty, I drink. When tired, I sleep." Do you see how effortless and natural that his mind was in the answer? This represents a sample of the Tathagata mind. The questioner then commented, "If hungry, then eat. Thirsty, then drink. Tired, then sleep. Then how are these different from most beings?" They are very different from a Zen practitioner, who, when he is hungry, he eats whatever is available to get by. Whereas with the common man, he has to choose the food to his liking, else he would not eat it. Isn't that right? In the forest or on the mountain, a Zen monk would have to pick up a muddy water, filter it out as much as possible, and drink it without complaining. Whereas nowadays, we would complain and probably not drink it. Now let us talk about sleeping. A Zen monk could stand, leaning against the wall, and sleep. He could kneel and sleep. He could lie down and sleep. He could sit in a lotus pose and sleep. You cannot do this. You would need a soft pillow or a warm blanket in order to sleep. A Di Đà Phật. So you see, regarding eating, drinking, or sleeping, an awakened person is different from a person who is deluded by the outside world. Do you see clearly now how the Tathagata mind, which exists in each of you, is different from a deluded mind? Sit down and focus clearly in your mind. and you will see that the Tathagata mind is not far away. When you first heard about a Zen monk practicing on the mountain for 5, 10, 20, or 30 years, and sometimes in deep meditation, you might think that it is an amazing feat, but it is not. He was up there to live with his pure mind. That is all. It is a very natural act for those who understand. Furthermore, when a practitioner said all dharmas are Buddha dharmas, correct. That is correct for those who understand Buddhist teaching. But for those who made the same declaration but did not understand Buddhist teaching, then it is incorrect, because they still have a biased and unsettled mind. If the Dharma have not been settled, then you cannot call it Buddha Dharmas. Namo Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. If a good man or a good woman crushed the great chiliocosm into minute particles, would there be a lot of minute particles? Subhuti answered, Well-honored one, many indeed. Why? Because Buddha has said, these minute particles are not really minute particles, but just temporarily called minute particles. If these minute particles do really exist, Buddha would not have called them as minute particles, but just a form created by the crushed world. Subhuti. When the Tathagata speak of the great chiliocosm, these are not worlds. They are just called worlds. Why? Because if these worlds are real, then the Tathagata would not have called them worlds, but a combination of a lot of minute particles. The Tathagata has said the combined worlds are not really combined worlds, but just temporarily called combined worlds. Subhuti. The common people do not know the world is from the combination of a lot of particles, so they think that it is real and become attached to it. Namo Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. This section is very special. The Buddha wanted us to use the prajna wisdom to eliminate the assumption that our world is real. What is a minute particle? It comes from a physical item that you chop into millions of pieces so that you cannot further chop up. This world and the minute particles are just temporary names because they are made from each other. The world comes from an infinite amount of minute particles, while the minute particles come from the world being chopped up an infinite amount of times. Therefore, these two forms are not permanent. Most beings are dependent on and are generated by these changing forms. They assume this world is real, in turn generate all dharmas, and which cause the mind to become attached to the outside world. When the mind is attached to the thousands of dharmas, then it loses its pure mind. Once the desires from the five senses cover it up, if you want to see the light of the pure mind, then you must eliminate the dark clouds generated by the five desires of the senses. Likewise, in your journey, if you know that the world and the minute particles are not real, they are transitory and only exist due to karmic connections. They exist in false names and through our attachment, while interacting with them through our five senses. Even your eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and body are transitory and not real. If you believe that your five senses are real and become attached to the dharmas, then your mind becomes deluded and your pure mind is covered up. This is why a monk has 250 precepts to follow, so that his mind won't be contaminated by outside influences. These precepts can transform a deluded mind into a pure mind. Regarding methodology, a practitioner who sees his pure mind without much training and attains immediate understanding is called Đốn Ngộ. Whereas a practitioner who maintains his precept, vows, and continuously practice to see his pure mind and attain gradual understanding is called Tiện Ngộ. This Diamond Sutra shows a way to achieve immediate understanding or Đốn Ngộ. If you listen to this sutra and detach yourself from everything and see your pure mind, then you can attain Đốn Ngộ right away. But the problem is that you could not detach or let go of this world. You read the sutra and understood it. You read the sutra and felt excitement. But when asked to let go, you could not. You need to try harder. An outsider brought flowers and offered to the Buddha with both hands high up. And once the Buddha received the flowers, the outsider lowered both hands naturally. But the Buddha then asked him to also let go completely of his body and mind. The outsider did not understand. Likewise, if we don't understand the prajna wisdom of the Diamond Sutra, then you will continuously be in the cycle of rebirth into the six realms. This world exists because of the combined karma. This world will be a place of your rebirth. It's due to your attachment to it. If you are truly bored with it and truly detached from it, then I guarantee you that you are in your nirvana already. Today, you are not in nirvana. It's not due to God's act, but it is due to your attachment. Do you see that after reading the Diamond Sutra, the way to practice is shown clearly? The Buddha mind is right in front of you, but you cannot grasp it because your senses and the world's Dharma are blinding you. That is all. If you want to follow the path, then you need to clear up these blind spots, these clutters that are blocking your pure mind. The correct practice is not hiding yourself in a cave or up on the mountain, meditate and avoid all human contact. Let me tell you a story. There was a temple in Vietnam which had a monk who was very careful in his practice. Every time there was a female worshipper visiting the temple and left, he would thoroughly scrub down wherever she had seated. He would avoid all female worshippers' contact. Whatever you are afraid of, then that is where your mind is stuck. If you are fearful of the opposite sex, then your mind subconsciously is stuck on it. When that monk was near death, he was not able to go, because while lying on his deathbed, his mind still desired to hold the hand of a female. The temple's worshipper felt sorry for him and brought in a girl so that he could hold and squeeze her hand until he was satisfied and finally left this world. This represents a case where a monk practiced was based on forms and not on the understanding and liberation of the mind. He did not realize the form outside corresponds to the mental form inside. If you are not clean inside, then you are not clean outside as well. A-di-đà Phật. This is where I want to remind you all. You practice and focus on your mind, not the outside forms. Don't forcefully block your thoughts so it could not spill out. Just be natural with your practice. Be aware of your weakness and try to resolve it by understanding its roots and gradually work on its detachment. A-di-đà Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. People have said that the Buddha declares the four forms of ego entity, human, all beings, and lifespan limit biases. What do you think? Do they correctly understand my teaching? Well-honored one, no. They would not understand the Buddha teaching. Why? Because the well-honored one declared that the four forms of ego entity, human, all beings, and lifespan limits are not real, but are just temporarily called ego entity, human, all beings, and lifespan limit. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. This section reminded us that these four forms are mentioned for you to practice and not to be analyzed and discussed. When you use words to describe, then you are in a fake world already. For example, there was an instance when one of the students asked me, "The mind of the past doesn't exist, of the present doesn't exist, of the future doesn't exist. Then what mind do you use to do Dharma lecture?" A-di-đà Phật. When he asked me such a question, his mind was already in an erroneous mode. He used erroneous thought to ask me and wanted me to present an answer in the pure mind mode. That is very difficult. Likewise, when the Buddha used the word ego, human, all beings, and lifespan limit, he was using vocabulary in order to describe those four forms. Do you understand? If the Buddha used his pure mind and not present these fake four forms, then how could he present his teaching? Therefore, in order for the Buddha to explain the four forms clearly to all beings, he had to use words, vocabulary, and temporary names so they could understand. He was not attached to these fake names, whereas we are attached and stuck to these fake names and forms whenever we use them. The word usage by a holy person is different from a commoner. The Diamond Sutra points directly to your pure mind, which is right in front of you, not anywhere else far off. Don't focus on words, which will lead you toward erroneous thoughts. Study from your pure mind. If you use words, you will emphasize methodology and techniques to communicate with each other and be stuck with erroneous thoughts. When you use words to communicate, you are in a relative environment which has conflicting sides. Listen clearly. If your mind is in the absolute instead of relative environment, then there will be no conflicting dharmas to fight it. A-di-đà Phật. Therefore, if you use words to describe something, then a Zen master could use no form to eliminate that idea right away. You can never tie down a Zen master with your words, no matter how fancy or logical you think it is. A-di-đà Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. Those who aspire to supreme enlightenment should not think all dharmas do exist, but should see them as false, recognize them as false, understand them as false, and believe them as false. Subhuti. The Tathagata declares that all dharmas do not exist, but are temporarily referred to as dharmas. Ayida Phap. The Buddha eliminates all dharmas so that all Buddhists can achieve blissful minds. If you are still attached to the Dharma, then you are still stuck on words and physical forms of the outside world. If that is true, then you could not see the true Dharma, which exists in your mind, not outside. If you truly understand that all dharmas are false, then you would have already returned to your pure mind. Just like when you see the moonlight shining, if you trace it back to its source, then you will see the moon. If you don't trace the moonlight, you will not see the moon. The moonlight is similar to the false Dharma. You use the false Dharma to find the true Dharma. Likewise, if you aspire to seek the Bodhi mind so that it could help you to become a Buddha, but by initiating a thought to seek the Bodhi mind, then that is already false. But you are using the false to find the truth. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you don't grasp the false, how can you see the truth? If you don't hold on to form, how can you see no form? All dharmas are relative, not absolute. If you use words to explain or discuss, you are still in the relative environment. A practitioner who truly understands that the world dharma are false, is he still a commoner? No. He is a being that is beyond a being. His physical body is transitory like others' being, but his mind has been liberated. He is transcendent and not bound by this world. His six senses, eyes, ears, mouth, nose, touch, and thoughts, are not bound and are free. He is in his true form. Namo Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Subhuti. Someone who takes the seven treasures that are filled in all innumerable world and give it all away, compared with a good man or good woman who aspire a Bodhi mind to study this sutra at least 4 lines, and then practices, recites, and explain it to others to hear. Then the blessing attained by the latter would be much greater than the former. How should he explain the sutra to others? By detachment from all forms and appearances, by staying in the absolute and be motionless. Như như bất động. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. In this section, the Buddha was repeating the same concept he made earlier. He wanted this concept to go deep in your mind and have you clearly understand it. If you make an offering and initiate a thought that you are doing charity and also seeing giver and recipient, then you have made 2 erroneous thoughts already. If you compare it to a person who studies and practices the teaching of the sutra, if you could understand and practice the true meaning of this sutra, and then explain it to others, then you are in a much better situation than the former. You have entered the environment of no form offerings. If someone makes an offering, he would first initiate a thought of giving, Second, initiate a thought of recipient. Third, initiate a thought that the recipient would be happy to get the gift. Fourth, initiate the thought of feeling satisfied when the recipient is happy. Do you see that? All of this is in the environment of attachment and bondage, even though they are good thoughts. If you can understand your pure mind, then you have freed yourself from bondage. A-di-đà Phật. Once you have liberated yourself, then you will have an awe outburst, realizing that all beings have the Buddha mind that you have just seen. I hope that after listening to the Diamond Sutra, which I have just lectured, it will be a precious stone that could shine brightly on your own treasure that is hidden deep inside your mind. So you can use your own precious stone to first liberate yourself and then liberate all other beings. A-di-đà Phật. Now back to the sutra text. The Buddha made the following declaration. All the world's karmic dharmas are no different from a fleeting dream or lightning in the clouds, like water bubbles, like an image flashing by. Contemplating like that, so it becomes common and unforgettable. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. You will see these four lines often in the Buddhist temples. In this world, all the dharmas are like what you see in a dream. They are transitory. They are false image. It is like a flash of lightning in the rain clouds. If you all contemplate on the world dharmas that way, then they will not be able to bind you. Why do these four lines get recited by the monks in the temple's room that has altars for the dead? It is because the monks want you to have these transitory, impermanent thoughts, so that they are compatible with the thoughts of the dead, so that they know that this world dharmas are like dreams and water bubbles. The dead should all forget about them and return to reality and become liberated. The Buddha taught these four lines so advanced practitioner can be awakened after reading them and let go of everything. Becoming a Buddha without changing your face can be done if you truly understand these four lines and apply them in your life. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Now back to the sutra text. Once the Buddha finished the discourse, Venerable Subhuti, together with bhikshus, bhikshunis, lay brothers and sisters, all the realms of gods, men and asuras, etc., who heard him, were filled with joy, accepted his teachings, and agreed to obey and practice. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. The sutra normally has three sections. First is the introduction, then there is the main discourse, and last is the transmission of the sutra. So who does the transmission of the sutra? It is not dependent upon the Tathagata alone to transmit this discourse, but everyone who hears it, like the bhikshus, bhikshunis, lay brothers and sisters, all the realms of gods, men and asuras, are responsible to uphold the teaching, so present and future beings could have the opportunity to realize the pure mind and attain liberation. So you all can see that the obligation to transmit this sutra is not my own alone. but belong to everyone who hears and practices it. Why? The Buddhist Dharma is for me to explain and teach, but the continuation and upholding of the Buddhist Dharma belongs to all practitioners. You all are the base and foundation of Buddhist teachings. If you have a selfless mind and a wish for all beings to be at peace and content through Buddhism, then your responsibility is truly great. A-di-đà Phật. Today, I pass this responsibility to you all. Once you understand the Buddhist Dharma, its earned blessing, its fortunate blessing, and the complete fulfillment of the path, then you are obligated as well, and not leave it for just the monks to transmit and preserve the Buddhist teaching for present and future generations to learn and liberate themselves. Today, I completed my lecture on the Diamond Sutra. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.